Now, from dusty bowl to sparkling success story. That's perhaps the best way to describe the southern African nation of Botswana, a country that at independence 50 years ago was seen as a vast trackless wasteland with little to celebrate and little hope of economic stability. At the time, there were only 12 kilometers of tarred road in a country the size of France. There were less than 10 medical facilities and about the same number of schools. But today, 5 decades on, Botswana is described by the UN as Africa's veritable economic and human development success story, with the third best road network on the continent, Africa's least corruption level, and one of the top 3 in literacy and health facility rates. It currently has a GDP per capita that makes it an upper middle income country. So how has it gone from a backwater to an African miracle? Well, put simply, wise stewardship by Botswana's leaders has seen the country avoid the so-called resource curse, where mineral wealth has been squandered, as in Nigeria and elsewhere, with the government of Botswana efficiently managing and investing a mining boom in diamonds. Botswana is also doing reasonably well on democracy, the rule of law and peace, and is one of the top 10 nations in the world that are truly free from conflict. So, an upbeat and positive African story. So where lies the disappointment, and can Botswana serve as a role model for the rest of Africa? Well, to go behind the headlines and assess the narrative of Botswana's African success story, I'm joined in the studio by the Botswana High Commissioner to Nigeria, Pule Mphotwe. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for inviting me. And
always a pleasure to see you. So 5.5 decades after independence, would you hail your country, Botswana, as an African success story, as the UN and many others have suggested?
Well, I think we have done well. We're modest lot. It's not in our nature to beat our own horn. But I think it's a combination of 3 goods. I would say good policies, good governance, and good luck. So I think we've done quite well, given the circumstances, how the odds were stacked against us at independence. Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to come to all that in a minute. But according to one analysis, this success is immediately evident on arriving in Botswana's capital. The streets are said to be clean and orderly, traffic flows easily, modern glass buildings gleam against a clear blue sky. This was somebody writing for the BBC about Botswana. That analysis, nevertheless, was done 6 years ago. When Burundi celebrated 50 years of independence. Is that still the case today? Everything working well and not turning chaotic?
No, I think in the main we're still on a good path, but of course we cannot afford to be complacent. I mean, there's no democracy which is perfect, and ours, which is just 55 years old, is still a work in progress. So there are still areas which need to be worked on immediately, and actually the COVID-19 pandemic really put it, showed us that it is very, very important to do certain things that we had been kicking down the road for some time.
And of course you also had a big problem with the AIDS pandemic. I mean the AIDS epidemic, didn't you?
Yes. It reversed, the AIDS epidemic reversed the gains which were made post-independence, particularly in health. But I think we were the first country in Africa to introduce antiretroviral drugs therapy for free to all citizens. Well, not all citizens, but everybody who lives in Botswana. So I think we are doing quite well in that regard, but it's still, we cannot afford to be complacent, as I keep on saying.
And how has the COVID pandemic affected Botswana?
It affected us very, very, terribly. As you know, Botswana's story, it's to do with the government, diamonds. And as long as diamonds are not being bought, it means the government doesn't get the revenue which it plows into the social services.
Right, so it's more of an economic impact rather than a health impact.
Yeah, it was a health impact also. We were drastically affected by the Delta variant. I mean, last year we were doing quite well. I mean, last year there was a time where we would go a few days, sometimes up to 2 weeks without a positive case. But the Delta variant was not that kind to us. And of course, because we are so-called a upper middle income country, we were not able to get the number of vaccines that we had actually paid for. So we lost quite a number of our people, in the months of June, July, August. But it has since stabilized. But in terms of the economy, we are barely, doing. I mean, the economy underperformed by negative 26%. It is only in this first quarter of 2021 that we are registering a modest 0.7% growth. So hopefully it will get better.
Right, but what about things like, you mentioned vaccinations. I mean, what percentage of your people have been vaccinated now?
I think probably 40%.
Right. But that's a lot better than most African countries are doing.
Yes, but it is only in the last few months,
right.
In the last 2-3 months.
But I suppose the difference is that you're buying the vaccines. I mean, you're not waiting for somebody to hand them out to you.
Yes, but because of the vaccine politics, nationalism, I mean, we felt hard done by because we were not able to get the vaccines at the time that we wanted.
Right.
Especially during.
But you had the money to buy it, basically.
Yes,
right.
They bought the vaccines last
Here's
year.
a bag of diamonds, give me the vaccines. Is that the way it sort of worked?
No, I think it's like part of the good policies of Botswana. Everything is always budgeted for. So money has to be, a lot of our government offices, including the embassy here, we had to forfeit certain,
luxuries.
Yes, so that everybody in the nation could.
Right, and you mentioned good governance and the policies of government. The overall success of Botswana has been attributed to long-term vision, stable politics, prudent government, and I might add, and you mentioned that as well, luck.
Yes.
And the luck comes from the fact that Botswana is blessed with a huge fortune in diamonds, diamond deposits, and vast sort of wilderness areas, pristine areas where lions and big cats and all the rest of them roam free, and which are also home to more elephants, from what I've read, than anywhere else in the world. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, I think so. I think our leadership was really played a key role. They were truly visionary. So sometimes we use this visionary leadership. It becomes a sort of a cliche. But I think in our case, particularly that first generation, the first president, Sir Kama, and his deputy and all those they were really visionary in terms of. I think there were two things which they really, I think, in my opinion, were masterstroke in terms of changing our fortunes. First of all, because at independence, Botswana really, as you said, Clip there, had nothing. So the diamonds were not yet discovered. So one of the things that they really emphasized was the need to get our people out of poverty, because Botswana was one of the poorest of the poor countries. And the other thing was the respect for property rights and respect for rule of law. Yeah, so I think
absolutely. And
the third one was the third masterstroke was where they convinced the traditional rulers, who from time immemorial were holding the land in trust of the people, to convince them wherever these minerals can be found in the country, they will belong to the states to the state on behalf of everyone, not an individual. So such that if diamonds are found in Charles's farm, he's going to have to move and he'll be settled elsewhere.
And the people did that reasonably willing.
Yes, of course, that first generation of leadership convinced the traditional leadership. So I think people really, some of these concepts of democracy, they're not really foreign to Botswana. I mean, the Tswana people, by the way, there are more Tswana-speaking people in South Africa than in Botswana. But you know, they have this quota system of consultative institutions.
Yes, absolutely. I've seen quite a bit of that.
Yes, so I think they were able to translate to the understanding of the local population.
And also because I suppose they could trust the government.
Yes.
I mean, part of the problem in many parts of Africa is that people don't trust their governments with their resources and all that sort of thing. And but it's interesting that you mentioned what happened at independence with Seretse Khama and all the rest of it, and the fact that, I mean, you could say the same thing about a lot of African countries, though. Most of them at independence had leaders who had vision and who wanted to make a change. It's either eventually, many years on, they didn't want to relinquish power, or they were forcibly taken out of power and things then started going south.
Yes, I think, but also in our case, I think the openness, the transparency, the consultation. Because people were, I mean, literacy rate was very, very low, and so people had to be brought along and held, so that they understand. Because
yes, I see what you mean.
They were. I mean, during the 8-year protectorate days, I mean, really, there was not much that was happening in terms of education and building of schools, and there was not even a single school built. The schools which were in existence were those built by missionaries and churches. So I think I keep on going back to this, our culture, the culture of consultation. Really, because people could not understand terms like democracy, so it has to be explained in the language that...
Right, so the key really was the fact that you maintained that your traditional culture in modern governance.
Yes.
Stay with us, we want to talk with you some more. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our assessment of the narrative of Botswana's African success story with the country's High Commissioner to Nigeria, Pule Mphotwe. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, you might recall the 2016 Hollywood movie, A United Kingdom, directed by Ama Asante, which focused public attention on the southern African nation of Botswana and the life of its first president, Seretse Khama. The movie depicts the love story of Seretse, heir to the throne of the people of the British Protectorate of Bechuanaland, now Botswana, and Ruth Williams, a British white woman. The movie shows how Seretse and Ruth defied opposition to their interracial marriage. But what is less well known is the sequel to the story and how under Seretse Khama's presidency from 1966 to 1980, Botswana became a tale of growth and stability, standing as a model of democracy, racial equality, and economic development on the continent. In fact, the leadership put good governance and development above everything else, using growing diamond revenues to invest heavily in social services such as health and education. And the Botswana High Commissioner to Nigeria, Pule Mphotwe, is still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. So wise government stewardship clearly at play here. So when you see the so-called resource curse in many parts of Africa where mineral wealth has been squandered, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the Dutch disease, the resource curse. I think it's policies. I think that's why I was talking about luck, because it is not, at least if the case of African countries is anything to go by, it's not normal or it's not common that where there's plenty of vast natural resources that things go well.
In other words, that corruption doesn't predominate.
Yeah, because of issues of rent seeking and corruption. But I think in our case, because there was so much, I keep on stressing that, because there was so much poverty. Don't forget that by the time we got independence around 1965, there had been a very, very devastating drought.
Yes, that is true.
In the region, so much that people were basically living from handouts. So because of the poverty, the disease, and just ignorance, really people had to be, made understand. So there are several fundamental principles which I think that first leadership stressed. The first one was democracy, because democracy in our land, we have democracy, like I spoke.
Tradition
as part of everybody has a right to be heard. Like in our language, everybody has a right to be heard. And then development is another fundamental principle which they stressed. And over and above that, because of where we are located in the region, at the time when we had what was happening in the south, in southern apartheid South Africa, to the west, occupation of Southwest Africa, and of course then Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, and the settler, the Mozambique and Angola were still under Portugal. So it was very, very important for the people to be self-reliant.
And you're also a landlocked country.
Very landlocked.
Yeah.
So the fourth principle was unity. So it was very, very important to have unity, so that we talk of good neighborliness, which is a big tenet of our foreign policy. Is peaceful, it's good neighborliness, peaceful resolution of conflicts, and peaceful coexistence, basically. So it was very, very important for us to be seen as a model at the time when people were being...
and I think the important thing is that you've kept with it.
Yes.
Because a lot of these things are, they prevailed in other parts of Africa, but they got truncated along the way. But that political stability has kept it going and being passed on. But there is some concern, though, High Commissioner, that today Botswana has hit a plateau. Unemployment is stubbornly high, hovering somewhere between 15 and 20%, and that was before COVID. Little progress has been made on diversifying the country's economy away from diamonds and tourism. I mean, that's the disappointment, isn't it? It may not be huge, but it is. And that's what makes things not entirely idyllic in Botswana.
Yes, no, it's true. I mean, it keeps us in check. That's why I was saying at the opening that we always try to be, rooted. I mean, very modest, because there's this concept of we call it Boto in Setswana, and the Zulus in South Africa will call it, in Zulu we call it Ubuntu. So, which is basically compassion and humanity. And I agree. I mean, we have serious unemployment challenges. I mean, it's now almost 27 to 30%. Because of the COVID crisis, youth unemployment. One of the things which came out of free education is that we have a population of young people who are really educated, because we have a literacy rate of 86%. And inequality is still a problem for us. I mean, the Gini coefficient is worrying. I mean, it's comparable to the one in South Africa and Namibia, which you can say it was legislated over there because of so we're still having very, very serious issues of inequality. One of the things which came, at least in the last few years, is the need to review the constitution. I mean, to make it more. I mean, there are those who have been agitating that there should be things like direct election of president, because we use the first past the post system. So some minorities, according to some.
So there is political agitation.
Yes.
There's also been, people. I mean, the stories of people being locked up and that sort of thing. So some fair amount of repression taking place. But I think that at the heart of it is the economy, though, isn't it? I mean, because there's basically no manufacturing sector. I mean, there was no manufacturing at independence, and since that time, there's been no manufacturing developed apart from the mining sector, where you've got, diamonds and all that sort of thing being mined. So really, you remain almost a one-crop economy.
Yes, I mean, we still. That is why we are struggling with diversification. I just want to clarify something about people being locked up. I mean, we have never had any political imprisonment in Botswana.
Yeah, but I'm told that journalists and things who try to report on things that are growing, like corruption and so on,
Yes.
have been sort of locked up and challenged about what their, the veracity of their reporting and so on.
And I can agree. In the previous administration, there were several. But under the current administration, really, media, the relationship between the fourth estate and government has really improved. But going back to your question, I think I've forgotten what it was about.
Okay, well, I mean, we were talking about the economy and diversification and transformation, but let me move it on from there, because I think you've actually answered that question. Yeah. The fact that there's been no structural economic transformation in Botswana, structural, since independence, that's what makes some analysts suggest that the country cannot serve as a proper role model to more sort of populous African countries. Is that something you agree with? Yeah,
it is true that because of the size, the share.
Because there's only 2.5 million people, I think.
2.4 million people. So the complex, but the challenges are still complex. One of the things about our mining sector, particularly the diamond sector, it's capital intensive. So it doesn't necessarily create a lot of jobs. Right. I mean, it's really highly skilled jobs in the
Yes, of course, it would have to be.
Yeah, but the government has put in a lot of funding and effort in trying to diversify away from the diamonds themselves, but also into other.
Yeah, but how is that manifesting? We've got about 20 seconds. How is that diversification showing up? It's not showing up in agriculture. Yes. It's not showing up in other things.
Yeah, but in the second largest sector, tourism, we are doing quite well in that regard. But I would give it to you in agriculture compared to the 40% contribution to GDP at independence.
Okay,
we are now barely at 3% or so. So.
Ambassador, I want to thank you very much indeed. And you still deserve congratulations. Your country has done a marvelous job. Pule Mphotwe is the Botswana High Commissioner to Nigeria.